Hey guys! So in this video we are going to talk a little bit about spaghetti code. So let's get into it. Now, what is spaghetti code? Well, spaghetti code is a lovely term that it kind of grew from, I don't know actually. I really don't. But it's basically, it universally is, as far as I know, the term we use for bad code, or code that is very messy or unmaintainable. And it used to be the case for me that I had this idea that I could fight spaghetti code, and that I would be one of those advocates of clean code, good practices, and all that good stuff. And to a great extent I still am, but with experience and so forth comes a bit of insight. And that insight is what I want to share with you right now basically. You see, unfortunately, I have found that for the most part, every project has spaghetti code. Every non-trivial project. And you see, the reason why we get to that point is because software development is literally that tricky. It is why I claim that it's one of the hardest things in human society to get right. Now, what I'm trying to tell you here is not that necessarily the problems themselves are complicated, but the way that we do software development is extremely complicated. Think about it from this perspective. If you build a car, that is an enormous amount of work. Building a modern car today is an amazing feat of achievement for any company. I mean, Volvo, Volkswagen, like all these different car manufacturers, they have spent like so much money and resources to develop a standard way to make something like a door, for example. And to put all these pieces together and create a car is, I'd say, it's amazing. Like, it's truly, I think honestly we forget how amazing these things that we take for granted every single day actually are, and the process of making these things. Now imagine having to go through all that. Let's say that the car manufacturer had to go through that, but they were not allowed to make a new car, because that's what we do. We ship a product, or we put a car together and then we sell it, and that's the end of the story. But what happens if you want to create a new car? Well, then you take the learnings from that car and you create that car, a new version of whatever car you're making, and you ship that as well. But that's not how software works. In software, you have the same car basically all the time. It's very rare that you create a new car, you have the same one, and you simply change it over and over and over and over. And you may not think that that's a problem, but it is a massive problem. Because when you're continuously adding features or adding more stuff or changing things, odds are that you're going to get things wrong. And what's even worse is that a car is as it is today, it has a certain amount of features, and they fit very well with that car for the most part. But imagine if you just had to use the same car over and over. Imagine if you had features that were 50 years old. You still had to maintain them, they still had to be in the car, but they also have to fit in with all the modern stuff you want to do. That's where spaghetti code comes into play. That's what we call legacy. That's the issue that software developers face. And it's why I've been telling you so many times that the true challenge of software development is to keep things consistent or easy or maintainable over time. Everything is very easy at small scale, but it becomes really complicated over time. So, for the most part, you are going to have to face one very sad fundamental fact, and that is that you don't really have the luxury of fixing code. That's the thing that I remember having a discussion with one of my teachers about this. It's the only time I've ever felt now in hindsight where we've had these discussions where I kind of reflect about them, where I felt that maybe I, as the student, had maybe the right idea, and my teacher either he's so smart that I don't understand, I still don't understand, or maybe he was in the wrong. Let's see what you think. So we were talking about this idea of clean code and working in messy code and so forth, and I said, basically we kind of discussed whether or not you should refactor things, or if you should just, what I call, add gems to ugly code. And I told him, he told me that, well, he doesn't, I mean, he prefers to refactor things and he doesn't want to work in an ugly code base. And I said, and me as the student, I said, well, you see, the problem I see is that I think that ugly code is something that you always have around. I think I don't think that it's feasible to always have nice code. I think that maybe it's a sane thing to learn to be such a good, quote unquote, software developer that you can work in any code base, because you're gonna have to. I don't think that there is such a thing as like always a way of making things nice. I think that it's more realistic to try to be so good to work in really bad code that you can still make it work, and add what I call gems, like you improve some small thing there, or you know, in a big pile of mess, you're the one person who sticks in these tiny little gems in all of that mess. And my teacher basically said, yeah, that's probably a way you could do it, but if I for one wouldn't want to work in really messy code. So, and you know, that's a feasible strategy as well, but that also means, like, I mean, it's just different perspective. I've actually met developers who, it was like my previous job, this guy, he started working and he resigned. Like, the code was, he actually told my coworkers, so this is like just word of mouth, but apparently he had told my coworkers that the code base was not in a good enough state. Like, they had told him that the code was in they had given the impression that the code was in a better state than it was, and he resigned and tried to find, you know, I assume that he tried to find work at the project with nicer code, I suppose. And that's a feasible way, I suppose, to work. But in my experience, it's a utopian vision to have a code base where all the code is nice. So what I want you to take away from this is that when your teacher makes you do something that seems ugly or unnecessary, or you feel that you're working in something, like you get frustrated because you're forced to work in this awful, horrible code, or that you're forced to work within the boundaries of a really horrible, ugly problem. Don't give in to the frustration and say, oh, well, in real life, I would just rewrite this. Learn how to work in that environment, because it's going to make you better. Knowing how to fix something is great, but you don't always have that option. So try to learn both how to work in really messy code and how to make messy code nice. Have a great day.